Welcome back to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing another AFL preview and we're talking Sydney Swans, the grand finalists from 2022. I've got another three guests, and guess what? They're the same as the GWS pod. They're the same as St Kilda, and also this is recorded on completely different days. Definitely not recorded on the same day. So let's get straight into it. Thomas Grattan, welcome to the pod.
Always excited to talk about my favourite thing in the world, the Sydney Swans.
JT, welcome to the Sydney Swans AFL preview.
It was really good of us to all dress and wear the exact same clothes as we did on the other days. So, it's good to be back. And unfortunately, I'm talking about the Swans and I'm just going to abuse them like the other two did my Saints. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, definitely. And Jacko, you're back, mate, back again for the Sydney Swans preview. How are you going, mate?
Yeah, mate, I'm good, mate. It's been 3 days and I still can't get out of this little box. I need the directions.
The Sydney Swans AFL preview. We're going to get through this preview all together, one and for all. Grats, you can start us off. How have you found the off-season for Sydney? It's been a pretty quiet one, something that Sydney are pretty good at, to be honest. So how have you found it so far?
Well, it's been a relatively quiet off-season for Sydney. They didn't manage to secure the services of Aaron Francis, which will be good for their defensive depth. Caused a bit of a stir on draft night by bidding on all the players, and the players they eventually picked were two players from the Gippsland Power in Jacob Constanti and Cooper Victory, and we're done nice and early, finishing it off with pick 40 in Caleb Mitchell coming from the Murray Bushrangers. So it'll be an interesting one. I personally don't think any of them will feature early, but you never know.
Well, thanks for wrapping up everything in that discussion in your little segments. Really, really good of you. So thanks for doing that. Jacko, I'll get your thoughts on the off-season for Sydney. Obviously, the ins and outs haven't been too drastic. Josh Kennedy obviously retiring, Aaron Francis coming in. What did you make?
It was quiet, but I guess despite the result, when you make a grand final, how many changes do you need to make? We farewell to club legend. JPK has been an absolute workhorse for the club, my favourite player growing up. So that was a really special moment to be able to farewell him at the SCG. But in terms of the off-season, mate, we don't need to make many changes. I think we'll be thereabouts. Tougher schedule, but what can you do?
JT, not the biggest Sydney man, but definitely one to keep an eye on. Obviously, they just continue to bounce back, whether they're not finishing in the 8 a couple of years ago to making a grand final against Geelong. How have you found them setting themselves up for 2023?
You can kind of see it in the back there. I've got a South Melbourne jumper in the darkness back there. So I know enough about the Swans, and I'm enough of a fan to sort of, at least respect them. And I was really, really hoping they were going to win the grand final last year. That was I think it was most people's dreams because no one likes Geelong, let's be real. So, it was everything that we sort of wanted, but obviously it couldn't get done. But Sydney have sort of been very good at having quiet off seasons, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, coming from a Saints fan who's had a very loud off season where a lot of bad things have happened, it's always sort of good news. No news is good news when it comes to off seasons. And so that's pretty much what's happening with Sydney, and they're 100% just going about it as they always do, and they're always going to be, coming back ready to make another really, 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 really strong season into 2023.
A really, really, really good response from you. Grattan, do you think the trauma from 2022 in terms of the grand final, I think, in my opinion, this has been probably one of the more professional responses off-season from a team who got spanked in the grand final last year. Do you think that trauma is going to make or break them this year?
Absolutely. I think the worst thing we could have done after the grand final was to instantly assume that nothing is going right and just completely throw everything out and start again. Fact is, we were good enough to make a grand final in the first place, so we're doing something right. We ran into a Geelong powerhouse. It was their time. It was their time to win, finally win not a premiership, and it's just not our time yet. So we just go back to the drawing board. We figure out we know what we do best, and it's time to keep going at that.
Jacko, how have you found the growth of the kids last year? Were absolutely sensational, and Sydney's been something that has been a place where the kids, the draftees have come in, shown beyond what actually some actually expected from their talents. Have you seen some peaks, or is there a lot more to come?
I think there's plenty more to come, mate. They're all young. I think it'd be hard done by to find someone, an AFL fan who isn't a fan of Chad Warner, especially. But I mean, he's just one of those kids that is going to be. So his development's going to, I think, is going to have another breakout this season and step up once again. And then you've got even the likes of Logan McDonald and Braden Campbell are still looking really impressive.
JT, combining those two together, the trauma of the grand final, spanking the young kids that have come through and outshone what everyone expected, do you feel like overall it could impact the 2023 season?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can sort of take examples even from a lot of past grand finals where that's happened. You know, the Giants in more recent times when they got, you know, pretty badly beaten by Richmond, they have, as we've seen now, they kind of blew up pretty quickly. And unfortunately, you know, with Port in 2007, it was kind of just an unfortunate time. And a lot of teams can really, really struggle to come back from it. But I feel like this Sydney team, because of how purely young they are and how talented they are at that young end, with, you know, like the likes of Chad Warner, like Jacko said, they've got some really, really good talent. And a lot of players that are getting old have those replacements. You know, Buddy probably is going to be his last year. We've got the likes of Logan McDonald who can learn from him and sort of take up that role into the future. So, you know, they might get a little bit wary, and, you know, when they come up against Geelong again, it might sort of bring back a little bit of memories, but they're definitely going to have a really good season again. I think they'll be okay.
We heard from Grattan about the draftees and what Sydney have brought in. I'll get Jacko's thoughts on the three picks. Obviously, pick 20, pick 27, and pick 40 they had in the draft. Jacko, were you happy with the selections?
I really liked the selection, but what I liked even more was Kenny Beatson doing his stuff. We didn't even use our first pick. We made back-to-back bids to, you know, pressure the Giants, especially to rush their academy players, and then ended up trading away that pick. So I think Kenny Beatson had a masterclass, and then before taking Jacob Constandy at pick 20, he's a like-for-like Tom Papley. You know, he's a live wire small forward with a lot of pressure. But arguably better, I like Cooper Vickery at pick 27, taken out of the Hawthorn NGA prospect, so they couldn't take him until pick 40. So we've really snaked under the Hawks guidelines there and taken them. He'll be a good little halfback in the same mold as Braden Campbell. And then Caleb Mitchell I haven't seen too much about, but he's sort of a bolter at pick 40. Wasn't predicted to go that high, but, you know, 187 centimetre frame, I think he could do a lot.
Definitely. I think it's been a pretty good draft hand, something that Sydney can definitely work through. We talk about off-season news. We did say it's a quiet one. So, Grattan, I'll just get your thoughts. Buddy Franklin, 2023, hitting 100 goals, 1,000 goals, last year. What are your thoughts for him going into 2023?
It's an interesting one for Bud, because we saw him. Yeah, he's had two very good years after what many people would have thought his career was done, after missing the better part of two more with injury. But we could clearly see his age was catching up to him on grand final day. He was well beaten on the day. So unfortunately, the flag may prove elusive, but I still think Buddy will. It's Buddy Franklin. You're not going to put time and effort into him, because the man can still do what few can on a footy field, even in what could be his last year.
Yeah, the greatest showman will go around one more, definitely. We'll get into the questionnaire, because not too much happened in the off-season for Sydney. And I'll ask the question to you, JT. How did you judge Sydney's pre-season?
Well, I mean, going back to the Saints point, I had a one-word answer for that, and I've pretty much got a one-word answer for this, and it's just quiet. It's quiet, and it's relaxed, and it's pretty much exactly what they needed after like you said earlier, like a spanking in the grand final. All you need was to just cool everyone's jets. No one panic. Don't panic sell. Don't panic buy. Just relax and stay quiet, and that's exactly what they've done.
All right, we'll go around the room for this one. This is the Fantasy Supercoach picks. Jacko, I'll get you to start this one. What are you thinking? Who are you picking from Sydney to be in your team?
Errol Goulden was my first pick this year. Aside from the ghost Will Gould on the bench, I hope to see him get a debut this season. Errol Goulden's my boy. He's third-year breakout. my favourite player at the club. I think he's, the sky's the limit for this kid this season.
Grats, who are you picking?
Callum Mills. His fantasy scores have just continued to grow with his long heralded move to the midfield, and he's still, I believe, only 26. So I think now that with Josh Kennedy's retirement, he is ready to carry this midfield alongside the likes of Chad Warner for at least the next 5 years. He's leading the club. He had career best numbers in 2022. And I just see him continuing to grow and go to another level in this year.
JT, who are you picking?
Well, I'm surprised no one kind of picked Chad Warner before, but I'm going to go with one that I've had pretty much every single year, and that's Isaac Heaney. He's one of those forwards that, like I've said it in previous podcasts as well, forwards are always kind of slim pickings in Supercoach, and it's always a bit tough. But Isaac Heaney is always one that you pick at the start of the year, and he might not always have a great game, but there's always games where he'll just go absolute monster and have a really, really good one. So Isaac Heaney is always one that comes into my team, and I think he's almost a must pick again.
Jacko, what's one change that has to be made 2023 for Sydney?
That has to be made. God, I don't think there's too many. I didn't have a problem with the way we played a lot last year, so I'm going to take it adverse. I'm going to go against this one. I'm going to say we don't need to change too much. I just think we need to improve on what we're already doing. I think our ball movement is something that we were really on top of last season, but that fell away on grand final day. I think we just need to be more consistent with that and really nail that system. And I'm happy with everything else at the moment.
Yeah, I think one thing you need to look at is trying to beat Port Adelaide. Just can't beat them at the moment. We'll go into what you are most excited for. Grattan, what are you looking forward to from Sydney this year?
Just Chad Warner to keep growing. I think everybody was caught by surprise by this kid at the start of the year. He had a very solid 2021, but also struck down with injury as well. And he played every game. He crossed 30 disposals, I think, 3 or 4 times. He was perhaps the only player on the Swans field who could genuinely hold their head up high after that grand final performance. And he's still only 22, 23. He's still got plenty of time left at the top level, and I just can't wait to see what level he can get to.
JT, who is it a big year for Sydney this year?
I think a big year in terms of his development and his time at Sydney is Will Hayward. He, at the start of last year, from memory, was sort of not on the outer, but he was very much sort of, his position was under question. And, they've got sort of smaller forwards in Heaney and Papley, and I wasn't sure if you could use him, but he really stood up points last year. He was at times some of their best forward when Papley wasn't firing and if Heaney was sort of out of form. So it's a big year for him to cement a spot in the 22. He's one that needs to play well each week to stay in, which is an unfortunate situation in that he has to constantly be on to be in that side. But I think if he can sort of cement himself as a solid 2-goal a game, 1-goal, 2-goal a game player, he can keep his spot in there. And it's got to be a big year to make sure he's in that side again, as they're going to keep getting better, Sydney, and he definitely wants to be a part of it.
Jacko, who's ready for a breakout year? I know I can already think I know who you're going to pick, but mention it anyway.
I'm not sure if you do. I think it's a breakout year for Logan McDonald. I think he's someone who is going to need to. We've spoken about Buddy. I think Buddy's role this year needs to be more as a guidance player and sort of really help Logan grow into his body and grow into the position. Because I think he's coming to the end of his contract. Logan McDonald's a player who's going to attract big money from a lot of clubs. He needs to have a good year for Sydney, and he needs to be treated well in Sydney in order to get that next contract and sign that next contract.
Definitely the route I thought you were going. We'll go into the headline that you'll see in 2023 for Sydney. I'll start with you, Grats. What is your headline?
Well, I'm actually going to give you a headline this time, and Buddy Goodnick, Lance still firing in game 350.
Lovely. I like that. That might actually be printed on a paper on your last couple. JT?
Yeah, I'm going to give you one too. How about that? It's going to be, it's Buddy Franklin related again. It's going to be the greatest showman exits the building. I think it's going to be his last season. I think, like we were talking about before, he might be the end of his career, and I think he'll probably go out with a bang, either with a flag or something very, very good anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I like that one. Jacko, what's your headline you'll see?
Good as Gould. I think Will Gould's coming in at some point and he's going to make that position his own.
That's very, very good. I like how finally you got creative with your headlines, guys. Next one we'll go to is a match that you must watch on the calendar this year. We'll go around the table again. Grats, I'll start with you.
This one's a big one. For the first time in 10 years, Sydney will be playing Collingwood in Melbourne. Round 8, Mother's Day at the MCG, Sunday 3:20. It's going to be huge. Sydney were very nearly knocked out of their finals by Collingwood in last year's preliminary final. And I believe that Collingwood side will be hungry for revenge. And I just reckon it's going to be an absolute cracker. The pair put on 2 excellent matches in 2022. And I just can't wait to see it again.
Thought you mentioned the pair then, something completely different. JT, what are you looking forward to watching on the calendar this year?
I sort of mentioned it before, but I think that it's the rematch against Geelong is something that's going to be really, really interesting. It'll really show how Sydney's mindset is with that team. Obviously, the Geelong team isn't really the same. Selwood's gone, but it's the blue and white hoops. You never know what's going to happen. And I think that rematch, I think it's in round 6, I believe, is going to be a really interesting one because you'll really see the demons maybe come back out, but we'll see how we go.
We'll go with Jacko, the next one. What are you
Yep.
looking forward to watching this year?
I think Gratz hit the nail on the head. I was at both the Sydney Collingwood games last year, and they're always good games. But I won't ride on his coattails. I'm actually going to give your mob a bit of a shout out. I think the Swans Port games are always seem to be good games. As you said before, we just can't quite seem to get over them. But I think this year is hopefully the year anyway.
Yeah, Easter on a Saturday night that weekend. It's going to be a massive one at the SCG. Very much looking forward to meeting your mob on that one. Minimum expectation for 2023. You know what, JT, you can sit out this one because this is not your mob. So, Jacko, we'll start with you again. What's your expectation?
I'll just give you a bit of a clip, mate. Minimum expectations at least 3 or 4 positions above Port Adelaide. So we're going to be finishing inside the top 8, and we're finishing the minimum expectations is top 6 to get at least one home final.
Yep. But Grats, what's yours?
I want us to win at least one final this year, but I don't think we'll be top 4 again. I have a feeling that a few clubs will rebound strongly and take those top 4 positions, and I think we will finish 6th.
Lovely. I love that. JT, I will ask you because I'd love to hear an ish answer again.
What, for the way they're going to finish? No, I've got no
Yeah.
ish. I've got no ish. They're going to finish 3rd. I think they're a top 4 team. They're a top 4 team. They're very, very talented, and I think they're just going to get better and better from what they have been getting. And I think eventually, if not this year, the year after, they're going to be in that grand final again, competing for another flag. But I'm going to go 3rd this year.
We'll see where they finish. It's going to be a massive, massive year for Sydney. I think it's going to be one of those years that you could tell a lot about a football club, how they bounce back from a smashing in the grand final. We obviously know about what happened to Port Adelaide, West Coast against Hawthorn. We've seen what happened to GWS not too long ago as well. So it's going to be an interesting 2023 for Sydney. Boys, it's been a pleasure to preview 2023 for Sydney with you.
Thanks. That's
Thank
been
you.
an absolute pleasure. I
I'm
loved it.
happy to do it.
It's good to hear. I'll look forward to seeing everyone's content on the Inner Sanctum. So make sure you subscribe to the channel for plenty more AFL previews and other content as well to come your way. Check out all the rest of the AFL previews that have occurred so far. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.